Welcome everybody to this session, and I want to let you all know that we are recording it so we can send it to you all later, as well as sharing it on our website. If that affects how you want to participate, that's fine. We just wanted to let you know up front. But we wanted to make this a resource available to other folks. So our session today is on how to facilitate design challenges in a virtual setting. We're coming to you from our homes, but we work for the Tech Interactive in San Jose. For those of you who are not familiar, we are a science center in San Jose that's been around for a number of years and actually started off as doing design challenges. So I am Erica Barwetto. I'm the Senior Director of the Bowers Institute at the Tech. And that's the branch of the Tech that's really focused on turning assets that we have and things that we do at the Tech into resources for educators working in school day and in out of school time programs. And I've been in the museum field working with educators in different kind of community partnerships for about 19 years.
And my name is Amy Bucher. I'm a professional development specialist with Bowers Institute and the Tech Interactive. I'm new to the Tech, but I have been working in this field for more than 15 years. I'm a former teacher, and I've been working in out-of-school time programs like Boys and Girls Clubs for a number of years. I've also designed online courses, and I'm excited to bring a lot of these resources for how to do hands-on learning in a virtual setting to this current situation. Our session goals for today are to look at the benefits of design challenge learning overall, as well as some strategies for hands-on learning in a virtual environment. We really hope that you walk away from today with some tips and ideas that you can put into practice right away. Whether they come from us or from the group as a whole, we encourage you to use the chat function to share ideas with everybody as we go through this session today. So our agenda for today is to provide an introduction or perhaps a reintroduction to design challenge learning. We're going to do a design challenge, and that's why we asked you to have a piece of paper if you have it available. And we're going to go over some strategies for virtual hands-on learning. We're going to get some tips from an educator. Nicole Pearson is a 5th grade teacher who's joining us to give you guys some tips from her own experiences. And then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end of the time.
Great. And I just wanted to say that for some people we got some notification from folks that it might be better for them to watch this later, and we'll email that out again to everyone here. So I wanted to acknowledge the interesting environment that we're all working in right now, and really the Herculean task that all you educators have taken on of adjusting your classroom or maybe your whole program or school to this new mode of teaching and learning. Really just kudos to everybody for the time and attention that you've taken to this, and we know that your students and families really appreciate all that you're doing. That said, today, as Amy was mentioning, we are going through some of what is a design challenge, the benefits of design challenges and how that really works for a virtual environment, and then sharing with you some tips and tricks. Normally we like to show you all the tips and tricks and have you participate in all of those as the best way to learn. But with a large number of attendees on our webinar, we're going to use, as Amy said, the chat function to its best and go through some of these ideas in more of a presentation kind of fashion. First of all, we just wanted to share what a design challenge is. A design challenge is something that uses a real world problem to engage learners in an iterative design process. So some of the key features are that design challenges are solvable by multiple solutions, that it provides opportunities for iteration so students can test and improve designs, and that they connect with participant interests. So in being open and having multiple solutions, students are able to pull in their prior experience and their skills as well as connecting it to real world problems and careers that they might be interested in or gain an interest in by doing the challenge. So why do we do design challenges? We really have seen that they have benefits for the learners in multiple different ways. They develop learners as independent thinkers. It empowers them by having, again, the structure be really dependent on their ideas and their solutions. We're not guiding them towards one answer. That learners become creators and problem solvers and really build those skills. And it also fosters collaboration, critical thinking, and informed exploration. So some of the things that really lend themselves, the features of design challenges that really lend them to being great in actually a virtual environment is that it gets at a few key things. So that question from students of, is this right? If you're not actually present while they're working on the design challenge, then it even puts more of the onus on the students to actually figure this out. But it's on them anyway, right? There's no one correct answer. Students really have to answer that question themselves. What do I do now? So again, in that students being self-directed and having self-efficacy, if you're doing a design challenge and there's a chance for students to basically learn from testing, learn from their own creativity and making, and is this thing working? What do I do now is a question that they actually have to answer themselves. The other great one is I'm done, right? You're in the classroom and you get the, I'm finished, I'm done, what do I do now? And really with design challenges, the process is the focus. So the process is what is engaging, the process is what's celebrated, and the process is what you focus on them recording and revisiting. And so that idea of I completed the task and I'm finished is less of the goal, and the goal is really for them to focus on and engage in the process.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the hands-on portion of this session. So we are going to do a quick design challenge for about 5 minutes. This one is one that is called Paper Tower. It's very simple. It's actually one of the design challenges in our 10 design challenges a day that we posted on our website. We created a fun hook for this. It's very simple and silly, but San Francisco fog has become overwhelming and the city is covered in fog, and they really want to find a building that will give people a chance to see the sun above the clouds. And so your task is to design a very tall building. In order to do this, you need to make sure you have your materials. So you get one piece of paper, some tape, 5 inches, any type of tape will do. And if you would like, you can also use a scissors for this challenge. So make sure you have your materials ready. I'm going to go over the problem again and some criteria and constraints. So you want to create the tallest tower that you can. That's your goal, your problem. Your criteria are that the tower needs to stand on its own. And your constraints are that you have 5 minutes to build. I'm going to start my timer in a second. And you're going to use only 5 inches of tape and 1 piece of paper. So everybody get ready. Again, you're doing this on your own, and we'll have a chance to test out sharing it afterwards if you'd like to. But I will be doing it as well and attempt to do this in 5 minutes. So I'm going to start the timer now. As you do this, think about how you can cut or fold or tape your paper to make it stable and tall. What are some shapes or strategies that might be stronger than others? If I had background music, I would play it at this point, but we haven't figured that out with Zoom yet. So I'll leave you to silently work on your challenge.
Or you can play music where you are.
Yeah.
Because you're all on mute anyway.
Yeah.
If you guys want to sing, that's fine.
I am not going to attempt singing.
So again, we're actually going to give people 5 minutes to build, and then we'll have people share out their designs. So we'll ask a few of you to raise your hand in order to share out if you want to do that in a little bit. And right now, a little bit of time to create and build. So one thing that you all can think about as you build is that there is a benefit to doing this alone and asynchronously, as well as potentially a benefit to having this be something that you do on a Zoom call. So when students are alone and doing this, right, they have a little bit of time to reflect and really be quiet about it, and think of their own ideas and wrestle with their own thinking. But if you had people on a Zoom call, like you can see us now, you can see how people might be cutting or manipulating paper or attaching things together, in this case, if they don't have tape in their office, in order to make their tower structure. So there's no right way to do any of this. There's just benefits and different benefits to different ways of having the learning and the building happen.
The other thing to keep in mind too is, like, if you don't have a scissors and just tear your paper. And
we're hoping that people aren't shy about sharing later. We all know we are in different forms of offices, be it what I've got here, which is a guest room / junk room / sewing room, now office and Zoom room, or if your kid or your dog is popping into the background, or a housemate. So again, don't be shy about popping into to share your design later after we finish our build time.
you have about 2 minutes left. And this is just a quick build. So again, the process is the important part. So if you haven't achieved your final idea or vision for this, that's okay. You're showing where you've come at the end of the time. Still need to work on stability.
I was gonna say, you could fake it since we're on video, so you might be able to hold it up.
I'm not holding. Okay, about 1 more minute.
Amy, are you giving yourself more time so that your final product is successful?
No, I don't think I'm gonna achieve success. Okay, I'll give everybody 10 more seconds and then we're gonna attempt to share our solutions. Okay. So I'm gonna walk you through this next part. So if we were doing this, I put some examples up here of solutions that some of our staff came up with and their children. But as we look at sharing solutions, we want some questions to guide that. And so we've come up with a couple here that you can think of and keep in mind as you're looking at solutions. So how are the towers similar or different? How did they create stability? How did you get height with your towers? And then what we're going to attempt to try, and I'm going to explain this and then I'm going to stop sharing and then we're going to see if it works, is that we're going to use the gallery view on Zoom. So what we found works is if you would like to share, raise your hand. And that way we know that you would like to be somebody who we can see. And Allison will put you on camera if you're okay with that. And then we'll be able to see your image on the Zoom gallery. And then we can all scroll through and take a gallery walk. So please volunteer to share. I don't see any brave soul. Oh, I see one brave soul. Excellent.
The sharing is going to be mostly visual, although we might ask people some questions, but so just as a heads up.
And I'm going to stop sharing this so that we can see more of you at a time. But think about, as you look at it, how the towers are similar or different, how they create stability and height. And then also, yeah, if there's anything else that you notice. And as you think about that, you can add it to the chat. So I see a couple people in there. You can turn your cameras on and we can see what you have. Thank you for brave people for volunteering to share your solutions with us. And I'll put mine up too. If you have a ruler or something to show height, oh my, Lori, yours is quite high.
It is high. I'm feeling very proud right now.
Sherry's is quite high too.
It's not freestanding yet. I'm working on that part. Oh.
You have a way to iterate.
Thanks to those of you who are showing us your towers.
And I wanted to raise my hand.
You wanted
Where's
to raise
my hand?
Marilee, we have you on,
Yeah.
on if you'd like to share.
I can see you now. Yeah.
Okay.
I have to think.
So for those of you who aren't sharing your video, you can take a gallery walk here. Let's make sure all of our towers are visible.
Here, let's
People
put
can
this
see.
down here.
Now we know the logistics of camera angle and towers. We're all becoming videographers in our
This is a prototype, by the way, this whole process. So thank you for being our testers.
We can
I
take
think,
a look.
Mike, we can't see your tower in.
I don't know how to take off my background.
Yeah,
How do I take off that Golden Gate Bridge?
You were on theme with our thing.
It's down under next to stop video. There's like a little carrot to click on.
So we're gonna have folks take a visual tour
Oh, there we
and
go.
think about the questions that Amy posed earlier, which were, what do you notice about the towers? How were they made tall and stable? What sort of techniques did people do? And how did they get stability and how did they get height?
And you can add answers to those questions in the chat. Well, we could debrief them now, perhaps a little bit with people since we have them on here. So those of you who are on camera, you can respond verbally, or those of you who are on chat can send in some notes. I see some notes about there being mostly tubular in shape. I also noticed some triangles. Some people are trying to use triangle shapes. Oh, and there's a little bit of, I noticed that one person cut. A lot of people didn't seem to cut or make it into sections, but there is one that uses sections and cutting.
I cut mine into thirds and then rolled it and then
Mhm.
taped each section together.
Same here. With the bottom being a little thicker because it was the base. In fact, I did this for the bottom.
Yeah, so some stability at the bottom. Some people went
Hands on
out at the bottom to gain stability.
Yeah, good
Mine's
observation,
just
Gabrielle.
like, I just
Mine-
made it a
couple.
wider, like a bigger circle, and then it just stands.
I see, Luis, you have a helper there.
My son, I cut mine lengthwise and then taped it. And, you know, I did that for stability.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
great.
That's good.
That's my tower standing.
Lovely. I had a floppy top to mine. This piece wasn't standing upright until I bent it, and then that was all the stability it needed was one bend.
And I found that I bent mine too much, and so now it's less stable.
I'm still struggling with how to keep it upright. I went for height rather than stability, I think. So that's an issue.
Nice, yeah, it's hard to balance both.
Mhm.
Oh, Emily, yours looks like it goes around. It's like a thicker tower than some of them.
I was trying to, I started off by using I don't know if you can see it. I started off by using a triangle base. It was a triangle. And then I was like, oh, I'll build up from there. But then I realized the tape I had wasn't very sticky. So I just triangularly put some rods in it, balancing in it because it was strong enough shape to hold them.
Neat.
Thank you all. And one thing we wonder about is size of paper. We didn't specify that when we were talking, so it could have affected builds as well.
I used a copy paper, an 8x11, by the way, for whoever asked the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sort of amazed how tall some of these got too. I had that same thought of like, are people using larger paper? But it's amazing how much you can get, how much height you can get.
Right.
I use something extra small, so this is not regulation size.
Oh.
Thank you all. Let's give them all like you can do reaction, like a cheer for everybody who shared. Thank you all. We're gonna give you back participant, and I will go back to sharing my screen. No, hold on. Okay. So now we're going to move from that example of a design challenge into some reflection on design challenge learning overall and how this might work in a virtual setting.
Hey, Amy, if you want to go back one slide, I think
Yeah, sure.
I have one question I want people to
right.
reflect on, either in chat or again, you can just write it down for yourself. But just take a minute to jot down as participants some of the things you noticed about the towers and what techniques you saw that other people used that really made them tall and stable. And then how would you build differently or modify your tower if you had another chance to build or more time, which you do. you can modify your tower. So think about those things. We'll just give you a couple seconds to sort of reflect and jot those ideas down.
And we just had a quick question from Sherry, who just was wondering why the time limit of 5 minutes for this challenge.
Good question. So part of it, Sherry, is to get people to build quickly, not to overthink it, but to just sort of do the process, because we tend to maybe do a little bit more planning and those types of things. The other thing is that then you can pause and then iterate. So, right, we paused, we built our towers, we paused and looked at what other people did, got some new ideas. And with students, I would give them time to build again. Right? So that way you can modify it. So that first quick iteration of like, let's get out some ideas, try some things and rapidly prototype. And then giving people more time after they've seen some examples or even just after their own first build to think about what they might do differently. It's a good question. I would encourage people to, again, if you have suggestions or thoughts for people as we're moving through the next phases of this, if there's things that you've tried, not just with your towers, but with some of these teaching strategies, please share and let us know. With our towers, we're getting some comments around people making it lighter on top, wider at the base, that thinking about how they might be tubular or how you might create more of a foundation next time. So that's all great suggestions. All right, now let's move on to debriefing as educators. So we did a quick example of a design challenge just so you could, if you hadn't experienced one before, you could see sort of how quick and easy they can be. They can also be a lot more involved, and we have some of those examples as well, and they can be really tightly connected with content and curriculum. But with virtual design challenges and thinking about the one you've just experienced or other things that you've tried in your classroom or learning setting before, we want you to take a minute and reflect on really in the virtual setting, and knowing that all of you have are dealing with students and learners who might be have different amounts of technology that they're using, and you're all using different platforms and different modes to teach. So based on your particular setting, the setting that your students and families are in, think about how you might introduce a design challenge and how you might have students do that prototyping. So the imagine, creating, testing piece, how students might document and reflect their process, how you might have them share their creations, and how you'd have them provide feedback to each other, as well as seeing feedback provided by others, and how they might iterate and improve. So if you just want to take a minute to jot down some rough ideas and think about this first, and then we'll go through some suggestions that we have and things that we've tried as well. So I'll give you about 30 seconds or a minute again, just to think about, reflect on this, and jot down some ideas based on your learning setting. Somebody was mentioning that they have their students present their projects on Flipgrid. And with that, they can also give each other feedback, as well as the educator giving feedback.
And I wanted to note too, if you would like to share these ideas with the whole group, you can send messages to everyone versus just the panelists too.
And if for some reason that function isn't working, let us know. All right, so I'm gonna think, we're gonna share a couple ideas and also just sort of acknowledge some of the challenges and opportunities that we have with our new virtual teaching and learning. So challenges that we've heard from folks that we work really closely with are around technology, both access and then how to use it. There's challenges about not being able to connect with students in the same way to help them, to support them, and just to connect with them, right? Planning time is a challenge. Having to do, again, the Herculean task that you all have done of converting your programs and your teaching into something that can be done remotely. It's a lot of time and effort. Communication with families is now, again, different and more, and getting everyone on board. And another challenge is doing things differently. But we've also heard from educators that there's some opportunities, or they've seen some positives out of this, that families and students are actually teaching each other how to use the technology, that some students are really getting more work done, that it's just sort of the right learning environment for them, and they're able to focus and accomplish more than they were in the classroom. One person commented that they actually have time to assign art now, and they didn't in the classroom. And they also had time to do a design challenge themselves. So they did a paper tower challenge for their students, but then also were able to try it out themselves. And again, another opportunity is just doing things differently, right? Acknowledging the fact that this is a time for all of us to really test and try and explore. And so it's a really nice opportunity, not only for growth for ourselves, but really to model that growth mindset for our students and to try something new and see what happens.
Somebody also mentioned it's a great chance for international collaboration, so you can reach a broader group than you typically do.
Yeah, and taking advantage of some of the options for bringing in friends and family and relatives to potentially be part of your classroom, where that may not have been possible before. So the tech has a few resources that we've developed along the way. Our most robust resources that existed before even our shelter in place and COVID-19 was our educator resources, where we have general tips on how to facilitate design challenges. We have lesson plans that are short design challenges, as well as longer design challenges that are incorporated into and connect with standards. And we have videos to support both of those tools. We also, in the last few weeks, have developed a number of parent resources. These resources are ones that allow for the design challenges to happen more easily in a home environment. So using common materials that are around the house, and that give good directions for the parents and the students both. Another great thing we've been able to produce with our media and social media team is videos that really introduce those challenges in a fun and easy way. And those are things that, again, my 7.5-year-old watched a video and was able to do one of the design challenges without reading through a lesson plan and reading through all the instructions. So it's really a fun way to motivate students to do it. And again, to give you other options for how to introduce a challenge. And then, as Amy mentioned before, and some people have tried out, the 10 days of design challenges. So being able to use resources like that. We also have a parent tip sheet on, again, how they can think about their role and not stress out about design challenges, but really think about setting their kids free on trying something out, building and testing, and being able to really give let their kids deal with maybe a little bit of frustration along the way as well. So we just wanted to give a couple of hints and our thinking and things that some of our educator friends have tried around how to introduce challenges and how to do some other key pieces of the design challenge process when you are teaching virtually and remotely from your students. Again, low-tech printing instructions. Some people I know have been giving out kits of materials and printed activities along with free and reduced lunch programs. You can also text or email the design challenge and simple instructions to families. And then all the way up to, you can get really motivated and make an introductory video to build interest, or use one that somebody else has created. Or just do a group video call to discuss content connections and introduce the challenge. Again, we have a little bit more flexibility with virtual classrooms as they are now, that you can assign a challenge at the beginning of the week, provide those instructions, and then do sharing later on. So they're able to, build during the week and even have that spill into spare time, which is something that I've seen in a lot of households as well. With the imagine, create, and test and reflect phase, again, there's sort of two key components, so prototyping and iteration. So again, students can do this asynchronously on their own, and may even do that even if you don't tell them to, that they may get really into a project and keep working on it. And then all the way up to you're able to send some prompts to students along the way and have them sort of have that focus and promote iteration. All the way up to really doing video prototyping sessions where they can share along the way like we did today. And then they might, again, also be talking and sharing ideas while they're each building their own project. The other important component is really having a way for them to document their process. So the easiest low-tech way is have a journal, have them draw and write about what they did, potentially have them take a photo, and even if you can't get their content now, finding a way to get that back from students later on, maybe at the beginning or end of summer. With some technology, being able to use photo and video to capture, get emails or texts from families, or all the way up to using your online platforms and Flipgrid and other things in order to really do more robust back and forth sharing, and capture videos those ways.
And feel free to add ideas as you go along of things you've been trying or seen as well to support these areas.
And I wanted to note also in the corner of each of these slides is a tech tip. So again, we've written up for the classroom context, what are some good practices for sharing solutions or prototyping or data collection? And those can give you a good jumping off point for modifications for at-home learning. And there's, for most of them, a PDF and a video. Sharing solutions. Again, this is a key piece that we really don't want to leave out. This is a way to really emphasize the process and to get students to reflect on what they did, as well as see what other students did and give feedback and suggestions. So again, a low-tech way is to share the sharing questions and have students respond to those prompts. They can, again, families could potentially send a text or an email with some of that information back, as well as with a photo of what the students did. Students also, it's great to have them record videos, and a lot of them are getting better and better at that these days, around, again, how their design works, what was their idea, how did it change while they were building, and what changes they would make if they had more time. If you wanted to do it in person and live, again, depending on how Zoom savvy or video chat savvy all of your students are, doing that with a gallery view and small group presentation times is a really great way to have the students share and get some feedback and interaction from each other. So again, you're providing this a scaffold and some tools for them to comment on each other's work and give feedback, as well as the question prompts, which again would remain the same no matter if you're doing a low-tech or an all-tech version.
And then we also had some tips about how you can facilitate the feedback process as an educator and what you can share with them about the work after they submit it or throughout the process.
Yeah, we're going to follow up this session with an email with some other tips that we have for educators on how to facilitate those different pieces. Collaboration is again a key thing. So there's the student peer-to-peer collaboration. If they are in a low-tech situation, you can really encourage them to build with family members, to pull siblings or parents into that building process. Maybe to write a letter, so take their journal page and send it to you, and you send it on to another classmate, or they send it directly there. There's the game of telephone, right? So you prototype, have an idea, you send it to the next person, and they build from there, and they send it to the next person who iterates on that idea. So that's sort of a fun asynchronous way to collaborate. And then again, the synchronous collaboration of people in the same room collaborating and sharing what they're building and sharing ideas, even as everybody builds their own device or structure. The other teammates you have now, even more than before, are the parents. The key things, again, is really thinking about supporting families with what to collect with materials, having easy guidelines for them to follow on how to do some of the design challenges, as well as a clear idea of what their role is, right? If they're supposed to set up a space and get that ready, that's fabulous. And then if you want them really hands-off, so the students are going through the build and design process themselves, you could rope the parents into giving feedback, having feedback sessions, or again, having the parents build themselves so the students can give them feedback and suggestions. And then, keeping it simple, keeping materials simple and easy to find, as well as the instructions. And then, as you all are all the time anyway, and are doing more and more these days of being flexible to adapt or make adjustments based on what students have access to and their personal situations. So we'd like to pull in Nicole now to really share a bit about her experience teaching virtually, and to provide us some perspective as someone who has been deeply involved with the tech and done professional development with us through our Tech Academies program, which is a local partnership in the San Jose area. So she can share about teaching overall and design challenges specifically. So thank you, Nicole, so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, thank you for letting me participate today. I have been on a roller coaster with this distance virtual crisis schooling teaching, trying to reach out to all of my students, like I'm sure many of you guys have been trying to do. And one of the things in working with the tech in this webinar, one of the things I really realized is the benefits of design challenge learning, keeping that going with my students, because the overall structure of virtual teaching can be really disconnected. And I've realized that this is one way for us to stay connected with each other, something we bonded over in a sense. So how it works for me right now with my 5th graders is I teach all subjects, self-contained 5th grade classroom is my home base is Google Classroom. My district uses Clever also, but I've really stuck with Google Classroom. And I am rolling out my design challenges with Google Slides in Google Classroom. So just to give you some context on how it's working for me, I know it probably could look different for you depending on what platforms and things you're using with your students. So one of the things I focused on is to not overwhelm my students too much is I have started to reintroduce subjects almost like I do at the start of the school year. Our first week of distance learning, I really focused on making sure they were proficient in logging into all of our math subjects. And then I added in social studies, then I added in engineering, then I added in science finally today. So it's been last Monday was our first official week of distance learning. I'm located in Gilroy, California. So that was the first full online day of learning and week for us last Monday. And it has worked really well to slowly add back in the subjects and the things that I need my students to do. So that led me to my first engineering challenge with my students. We did a weekend bonus activity. I used the Tech's 10 engineering challenges that many of you guys have said you already did. We did the paper challenge. And how I did it is I presented it in a Google slideshow, and I had a couple slides explaining the criteria and constraints and the problem, just like we experienced in this webinar today. And then I added in 30 blank slides for each student to take a picture of their creation and then write up a reflection piece. So they could all be editing the same document on a different slide and be sharing their work with each other. And it worked really well because I do have students that are still shy or tentative about sharing their ideas and their work. And they were able to participate at the later end of the challenge so they could feel inspired and confident based off of what their peers were doing. So yeah, that's one way to asynchronously do it, just like Erica and Amy had said. But another way that I plan to do with my students is we will be reading a novel together, and there is kind of a fishing challenge in the novel for the main character, and I will have my students have to create some type of fishing contraption. And the main planning piece I see for myself is giving my students a realistic materials list that they could find at home, things that would be really easy for them to find at home, and then also coming up with a somewhat standardized way to test. And so it may be something like, how many little pebbles can your device pick up? I don't really know yet because I'm still brainstorming. But that is, and we would do that one live together, synchronized at the same time. And so there are benefits, I think, to each of those models that I've kind of put some thought towards already. For the asynchronous model, it really helps students focus on their iteration because they can take as much time as they want before presenting their final product. And then they also focus on their submission of their design and then their reflection. When it comes to a synchronous design challenge, something like we did today where we did it all live with each other, it really helps them focus on their budget, so their time and their materials, because they don't have all the time in the world to switch out materials or redo with their materials. They have to design a solution and perform with what they have. And then when it comes to sharing solutions, some of you guys already mentioned Flipgrid, which I love Flipgrid. Other ideas you could do would be a Padlet, because it's very easy to take like a selfie or snapshot from your to put on your Padlet. And then Google Slides is really my students' favorite. Again, 5th graders, 10 and 11 years old. That is what they're the most comfortable with right now in sharing their solutions. I wanted to just briefly mention materials and how that can be, whether you're in the classroom or at home learning, that can be a challenge or a roadblock. And so really thinking outside the box and things that could be materials foil has been the latest trendy thing that my students and my son has been loving to design things with. But even things like cereal boxes and paper towel rolls, all of those type of things that our students may think of as recycling or trash, we can kind of start a list. My class has started a list of the things that we can use as materials in our challenge. And then the last thing that I wanted to say is we are all kind of live performance iteration and distance teaching right now. And I am really honest with my students and constantly telling that as a teacher right now, this is a design challenge for me. I am having to design solutions for every single subject right now. And if one thing doesn't work, then we are going to iterate and continue to grow and persevere together to make sure that we have content, we continue our learning and that we're having fun doing it. So I hope that this was helpful and inspiring to you. This engineering design challenges while teaching from home has helped me to continue to bring joy into my classroom. We like to have fun. We like to learn things that inspire us. And this is one way that my students have really stayed engaged and continued their learning from home. So thank you guys for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Nicole. We really love hearing your perspective, and yeah, thanks for the work that you do every day for your students and their families. We want to move on to the Q&A now. So if folks have questions, yes, we're going to post the video. So we'll send out a follow-up email with the video and the PowerPoint. We'd also, again, love to hear any questions you have. We can delve a little bit more deeply into some of the tools we talked about. If you have more questions for Nicole and how she's dealing with things and customizing things, please feel free to do that now. We have a few minutes left for that before we do our closing. So don't be shy. We had anything?
So we have a question that just came in saying that Kathy is starting a roller coaster design challenge where she normally will use marbles, pipe insulation in the classroom, but she's curious about any ideas for even simpler materials that they might be able to use to adapt for the home without going to virtual roller coaster simulations.
Right. So again, what we've found works out really well is just things from the recycling bin. Having cardboard and other pieces that you're pulling from there is definitely a way to do that. So that's definitely, you know, one thing is just pulling cardboard and paper. And like we saw today with our paper towers, you can do a lot with paper in order to get different structures. Nicole, do you want to add to that at all?
Unmute. Okay. Yeah, I have devoted thought to this because I know all of my students have different materials at home, and I have a 4.5-year-old at home, so I am deep in the toy phase of life right now. And I just try and think of things to like with a marble, like you need a marble, but what could you use instead? I try and think of like, well, what else rolls? So even for some of my students, they could try and adapt and use like a Hot Wheels car or even anything circular. And I would really throw it out to my students to see if we could brainstorm a list of what could be acceptable as a marble replacement and then come up with like an agreed upon alternative marble, if you will. Yeah, because I've thought about that because I have design challenges that I usually do at the end of the school year. We're not going to be able to do it exactly how we would in the classroom. So the materials list is where I'm still brainstorming. And I always tell my students, more than one brain is better. So let's pool our thoughts together and try and come up with the list.
Yeah, and we did post a social video on this recently, so you can also check out the Tech at Home site for the video and parent guide for this. I think it listed a couple options for the materials.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I think another thing to think about is Nicole was mentioning how to make things standardized. So with a design challenge, how do you standardize it? But then also, again, having that conversation of if we can't standardize it, how are we making the tests sort of still meet a set of criteria and constraints? So that's still a nice conversation to have with the students and to get them in the brainstorming mode on how do we make this work? How do we make it fair, as a lot of elementary school students like to think about it. And we have a good suggestion from chat around index cards and using those to fold different shapes.
And then it looks like Michael said that he has a weekly construction challenge as part of his virtual science camps, and he has a URL there for you guys if you are interested.
Fabulous. Are there other questions that people have or suggestions from your own experience and what you've tried out? We talked a little bit about materials, about ways to share.
I'll add one of the ways I come up with my own design challenges I lean heavily on novel engineering. So since I teach all subjects, I also teach reading, and I will frequently look at a problem that the main character is having in the novel, and then give the problem to the students to build a device that can help the main character out. So the challenge I will be doing with my students is we are going to be reading Fever 1793. We read it every year. And it's about the yellow fever pandemic in Philadelphia. And there is a scene, it's a minor scene in the story where the main character needs to fish and get some fish. She decides to use the hoop of her skirt and make a net. And so that is a challenge that we would do in my classroom, and I would bring in a kiddie pool and they would actually have to make something to fish with. Now, I'm not gonna be able to do that exactly, but it's one way that I can tie in my subjects and really bring everything together and make it exciting for them. So I think that's really important to not just teach engineering in isolation, make sure to blend it with your other things because it's meaningful and it's fun.
Yeah, and then Deborah said that one of her suggestions is to do toothpick and clay or mini marshmallows into 3-dimensional designs. Always a favorite. We generally don't like to waste food, but sometimes people also use spaghetti to do that as well.
Yeah, so a couple of folks brought up the fact that some parents might think it's frivolous or a waste of time or supplies to do these design challenges. So Nicole, I wanted to know, maybe you can share how you address that with families, and then Amy and I can add on thoughts if we have it.
Okay, so the social emotional benefits of engineering design challenges cannot be understated. This type of learning activity empowers students and gives them creative control. And that is something that they need more than ever now. And so the only way they're going to learn to apply the skills of perseverance and iteration, especially when it comes to a hands-on way, is to do these challenges. And if they're already using materials that are cast off materials like cereal boxes, those paper towel rolls, then really the wastefulness is zero. And so maybe if you need to convert some of the caregivers in our learners' lives to be on board with design challenge learning, try and come up with a neutral material that isn't necessarily wasteful. Another thing I'll be doing with my students is like building block challenges. So whatever type of block they have at home, whether it's Legos or Magna-Tiles or even wooden blocks, different shapes, 3D shapes, designs that they can make with that, and posting pictures that way. And the different ways I'll challenge them with it is like, who can make the widest, who can make the tallest, who can make the most colorful, whatever it is. And so either using materials that can be reused over and over again, or thinking of trying to use materials that would be discard anyways.
Yeah, and I think that, another aspect again is around just sort of the hands-on learning and what some folks can think of as being, again, for some younger kids, it's going to start looking like play because they're going to make up a story to go along with it, and there's going to be, unicorns and other characters and divide, pieces of it that don't really do the thing that they're saying it does. But being just informative with the parents around how it's developing those skills, like you were talking about, Nicole, and how it's also connecting them with reflection and processing, that iteration, and also building those softer skills around collaboration and perseverance, curiosity. So we have some information about that on with our tech tips, and we'll show that slide again at the end so that can help you convince some of the folks.
I think I was reading about middle school, and I have a lot of experience with middle school. I've taught 6th grade before, and I coach at the middle school level also. With working with that age group, what I know is that the real world problem really matters, and that if it is a compelling real life situation, then the older kids, 13 and over, you'll really see a high level of engagement and a buy-in to the design challenge. So Newsella is where I go when I need to find really compelling real world current problems, because I can kind of scroll the headlines there. So that helps.
Yeah. And Michael had mentioned Zoom rooms, breakout rooms, and that is a really great way for you to get your students to sort of collaborate together at a distance. It's something that you can pop in and out to, so you can check in on different groups at different times during parts of their process. And it's actually what we are using in order to do our Tech Challenge Showcase this year, and some of our communities of practice. So Zoom breakout rooms are a great tool for you guys.
And I'm seeing a question from Heidi around engaging 7th and 8th graders in design classes, and how that they're viewing it as a lot more of an elective rather than something that has to be done, and the parents sort of having that same view as well. So again, I think, sharing a little bit of information with parents around why design challenges, why design is important as a skill builder, and how it actually relates a lot more to professional life and real work with open-ended problems than some other content areas might, and that's sort of a critical skill for students, as well as giving the students something that is, again, where they're having to come up with what is the solution, what is the problem I'm trying to solve even, what is the solution, how can I iterate on it to really make it the best. Those are really critical skills that I know all of us use and use within our work. So I think speaking to the parents from that aspect might help. And then having, again, some easy fun things. So if they are viewing it as a fun extra thing, lean into that and make it even more fun so that it engages. So I think some of our videos could help with that, and some of the lesson plans that we have on the parent site. So the parent guides and videos, again, are designed to get parents and students really motivated around that. And so we encourage you to take a look there.
And Susan, I love your idea of middle schoolers coming up with tools to assist in social distancing and bringing that real world, very topical thing to them for them to brainstorm and come up with solutions on.
Yeah, a lot of design challenges are around building empathy, like thinking about your user and who you're designing for as well. And so for middle school, that can really help if they find something that means something to them or people they care about, and having them design around that can be a really nice hook for that age sometimes.
Right, and Mike just shared a design challenge that he did with his students around coronavirus, and he has a link right in the chat for you guys to go ahead and copy.
Yeah, and Heidi mentioned giving kids their own choice about what kind of design challenge they want to do, and again, that really promotes the engagement of being able to choose your own topic and design around that and find something that's relevant to you. We are near the end of our time here, so I want to be respectful and of everybody's time. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us and for participating and sharing your perspectives. We really thank you for taking the time out today and for doing the great work that you do. Thank you, Nicole, for joining us, and thank you, Allison and Amy, for your work.